protection, border security, and the linking, so putting together so that they can have access on their databases or on their surveillance cameras or whatever in real time. And this is something also very important, the term real time. You can find very often in the text of the European police forces, because they need much more bandwidth, they need much more data to deliver it. So with the surveillance cameras, for example, there's a shift now, a new generation of surveillance cameras. So in former times they had been analog, so they didn't contain so much data, so the packages were quite small before. Now it gets much bigger. And so they have to transmit much more data in much less time, and so the aim is to do it in real time in future. But the problem is the interoperability of the systems of the different EU member states, and I guess this is not only of the Eurosur system, this is also maybe you were asked before for the Schengen Information System, if you know that, which is one of the biggest or the biggest European database, mostly for migrants, but not only. And there should have been a second generation of the Schengen Information System ready until 2008, but it will not. It is delayed, and I think it's because of software reasons, because they cannot link the different software and hardware in the member countries. Also, border management means the usage of technology, like I mentioned before, some of it, the satellites, unmanned air vehicles, drones for border protection. So the usage of drones already led to arrests, for example, in Switzerland. So they were used at the so-called green border to hunt migrants, and they did. And on the other hand, the Future Group says, well, we really want to stop migrants by any means, but on the other hand, we want to use the new technologies to make the border crossing for EU citizens as comfortable as possible, which I find really crucial. So I think this quote expresses that very well. So the one-stop approach, which is an idea of the USA border guards. So it is also foreseen that in the EU you have the same system like you have now in the United States. So if you want to enter the country, you have to fill out a request in the internet, which is not like applying for a visa. It is just like, okay, I'm coming. So that they can probably tell you in advance, no, you won't. I talked a little bit already about biometrics, so it is very much known about like iris scan systems, stuff like that. I think most of you are familiar with that, but it is also about recognizing deviant patterns, deviant behavior, which I mentioned before for the satellites that are used for Frontex missions, for example. And there are many companies offering hardware and software for it. One of it is IBM, for example. IBM had the great chance to make a very large test at the Olympics in China. So they set up one of these C4I systems, including cameras, hardware, software, for the Chinese police this year. And the software also should detect deviant behavior, like lurking, for example. So, or as you can imagine, like cars that are leaving a highway at some point where it's not, whatever, there's no possibility, I don't know, so to detect deviant behavior of anything that is in motion or not in motion. Yeah. You have lots of processes of data mining. So, as I mentioned, there is lots of data already gathered, but the problem is how to deal with the data. And the police is using software that is searching in the databases, which you can imagine because nobody can read all the files. But the software can also search in audio files, so there is no need anymore to type all the protocols of telephone interception, for example. So you can easily run a software and let it search for the sound of the word Al-Qaeda in all different writings, for example. And this software creates, virtualizes social networks. Well, this is now a social network of some German companies and how they're linked together, but normally it is used against persons or incidents, and to get more information who is linked to whom. And this should also be in future in real time. So the Ministers of Interior, they have one favorite example. It is the airport example. So imagine there's a terrorist or there's some guy that is making suspicious phone calls from the airport, which means many phone calls, and he's calling somebody who's sitting in another plane, landing at the same airport, so they might meet, and they are both suspicious. And with the passenger name records, so that is the system that you have to, before the flight, you have to pass much information about you and where you book your flight, if you're a vegetarian or not, or whatever. And so the software can, in real time, check the risk of the people landing at the airport and give alarm, give advices what to do if they find any risk. So many vegetarians enter, I don't know, meat-eating countries, I don't know. So probably you're also very familiar with that. The police and secret services are also checking the social networks on public information. So I will not deepen that. And they use also so-called semantic technologies, which they call intelligent similarity search, which is not only searching for any pattern that you want to have found, but the software tries to create links, tries to find links. And this is what they call predictive analytics. This is already being used, like the searching of future crimes. So there are many companies that are already offering the software, and they also say that the software is used for many police forces in many countries. So it's not really known. So for example, they also say in Germany, German police is using this software. And I find this very interesting and very important, because that means that our data, let's finish that. So they call it the evolution of crime fighting from reactive to proactive to predictive. This is another company offering the software. And I think we really have to point out that, so what is being done with our data? Not only the fact that it's a scandal that they gather it, they want to know everything about it, but now our data is processed by machines to find if we are risks or not. And I talked to that with some people who are also doing lots of things in IT, and they said it would be a nice idea to demand that the source code of the software should be published. So how the software is finding links, how we are ranked as risks or not. So for sure the industry and the police, they will not publish the source code, but I think this makes very clear where the problem is, because for sure the software is private software, so written by, produced by the industry, and so the policeman that is using it, or the policewoman, like Google, doesn't know why anybody is ranked high or low as a risk. So I think we really should deal more about that and talk more about that. I will come to an end. So it's also the human factors that the police is interested in. So they have simulations. This is a simulation of public disorder. You have one company that is based in Oberhausen in Germany that is doing regular trainings in simulation of public disorder with police and also military. They created an own center for that. In which they try to feed the databases, because the database should in future, if there is a public disorder, should give decision help, and so they need to make the simulations. About the unmanned air vehicles, maybe you go to the basement, to the microcopter desk, and have a look at their quadrocopters. Just some words. These small drones equipped with cameras are already used by several police forces, like in France, Italy, and UK, to control so-called problem districts, like banlieue, for example. And about Frontex I talked already. And in Germany, the police in Saxonia bought it for football hooligans, kidnapping, and whatever might occur. And the police in Lower Saxonia, they bought it in the long run to better control the protests against the nuclear waste transports. About Taser, just some words. There's also a company in France, which is Taser France. They try to develop drones that are equipped with tasers. And last but not least, the remote search of computers. That is one favorite project of the German Minister of Interior, Schäuble. And what in the discussion in Germany is not really got voiced is that he advises that also for the European level. So he pushes the online search that should be cross-border. That means Europol. Should do that in all European countries. And this will also be part of the next 5 years plan I was talking about that will be decided in Stockholm. I talked now a lot about the high technology of internet monitoring and surveillance and control and command centers. This is a bit of terrorizing. This is a picture I like very much. It is a picture of a brand new Internet Competence Center of the Baden-Württemberg Verfassungsschutz, like Secret Service, that was created 3 weeks ago. And this is at the inauguration. So like that, the Internet Competence Center of the Verfassungsschutz Baden-Württemberg is looking. So it's not looking so dangerous. So as you see, they use Linux. As you also see, they have pinups on the wall. At the calendar on the right. So it's a very normal German office, and you have the files there, like Ordner, I don't know the English expression, and you cannot see this in that resolution, but it is standing IKZ, Internet Kompetenzzentrum Bedienungsanleitung, manual. So maybe what I told you is much of like future that is not written yet, but we have to deal with it, and we have to fight against that, and this is why I'm here. I mentioned it at the beginning. So what we are planning is a large campaign against the Stockholm meeting of the European police, and when I say a large campaign, means a broad campaign that should consist of all the sectors that are concerned, like not only civil liberty groups, but also critical lawyers, like activists, like migrant organizations, stuff like that. So we propose this campaign. You will find all the information about that on the websites that I show at the end. And we will try to have, at least at the NATO summit, one event in this direction, because, as I mentioned, the shrinking of internal, external security, military and police. So to point out that, and to end the campaign at the Stockholm meeting in November. And this should lead us to a development of a new form of proactive anti-repression. I'm not really sure how this should look like, but